From memorizing lines to mastering hand-to-hand combat, these are the strict rules the John Wick cast has to follow to bring this gritty, high-stakes world to life. But what does it really take to fully immerse yourself in this legendary universe? Let's find out by diving into the very first, but very important, process of staying true to the rules of this world.
You're going to die. Maybe not.
Because look, John Wick is not your typical action movie. Sure, it does have no holds barred, crazy action sequences like some others, but the concept of this world is totally different from, say, Die Hard. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond. Bond. James Bond.
Mission Impossible. Or even The Matrix. And what makes it so different? All the rules and codes that make it stand out. And if you're part of the cast, you know that these rules go beyond your character. You've got to embrace them for real. Like how the High Table is the one entity everyone, even John Wick, has to respect.
So tell me, Jonathan, why do you wish to live?
My wife, Helen, to remember her.
And that the Continental is a safe space, so you need to keep your anger in check when you're in it.
Jonathan, just walk away.
Yeah, Jonathan. Walk away.
Oh, and that no one, not even the council members at the High Table, get to insult Wick's dog at any point. Hey, that's a sore topic even among the fans. Anyway, being a member of the cast in the John Wick universe isn't just about acting. It's about embracing the rules personally, so you can act them out physically. Every time you watch these movies, you'll know that the cast is fully committed to making the world seem real and intense. And if that means they have to fight for real, well, they gotta fight for real then. No wonder most of the cast is required to have hand-to-hand combat training. This is great, because in action flicks, you can tell a lot about the film just by watching its fight scenes, how they're choreographed, and the cinematography behind it all. Speaking of which, do you know what my biggest pet peeve in this genre is? Shaky cameras, along with jump cuts, choppy scenes, and migraine-inducing shots. Like, come on, we know you're trying to hide a stunt double there, but could you be a little more subtle? In John Wick, though, the creators got the assignment, because every fight scene in that film is a work of art. The action doesn't look fake, and you can actually see what's going on and who's fighting who. Now, I don't know if you realize, but this level of detailing is only possible if your actors know what they're doing, instead of pulling off choreographed moves. Like, take Halle Berry, for example. For her role in the third John Wick film, she had to train every day for 3 hours, including 2 hours of gun training.
Bye.
And 3 for martial arts training. And on top of that, she had to dedicate 3 to 4 hours more than a dog trainer. Remember these dogs she shot this iconic scene with? Well, those are obviously not CGI pups, and they aren't trained in combat either. So Barry had to spend a whole lot of time to make sure her chemistry with the dogs and her combat skills were top-notch, all so she could shoot this scene. Get my point? That's what the rules are for these people. And let's just say, they're as tough as John Wick himself. Speaking of which, considering he's the title character, the rules for Keanu are even tough. Can you imagine the kind of pressure he's under? Like, Halle Berry had to literally spend months training with dogs for this small scene. So in that context, Keanu probably has to spend every waking moment perfecting his jujitsu and whatnot. And the coolest thing about the guy is, he does all of his stunts himself. So that's a whole other reason why his job is 10 times harder than everyone else in the cast. Doing a regular fight sequence is one thing, but to become John Wick, a guy who can turn everyday objects into lethal weapons, and whose name makes even the most powerful mobsters turn pale, definitely requires a lot more than just combat training. And that's where the rules come in, like embracing the presence of mind to think on his feet and speed up his reflexes. Reeves had to practice using props and everyday items to turn into weapons, preparing for basically any possibility thrown his way, so he can be ready to punch his way out. And obviously, the most important thing, making sure looks great every time he punches a man to death. So like, no pressure, right? But hey, you don't make a multi-million-dollar franchise just by skimming over the details. It's the little things that count, like the disciplined rules among the characters. Because if you think about it, John Wick's world may be merciless and painful, but the fact remains that the whole thing's set in some pretty disciplined codes that each cast member needs to know before they embrace their persona from this universe. This includes following all the unwritten rules that make this franchise unique, of which the first one is the Continental Hotel, a world in its own for its mercenaries of this world, who can finally breathe a sigh of relief as soon as they enter those doors. Remember, folks, no killings in this building full of killers.
Gentlemen, do I need to remind you that there will be no business conducted on the Continental grounds?
You can also count these gold coins as part of those rules, because nothing gets done here unless you've got these coins on you. And it's not like they have any monetary value or anything. Instead, they work more like a symbol of respect and inclusivity for each killer that follows the High Table's counsel. And speaking of respect, they need to have that for these talismans too, which follows a pretty cool concept if you ask me. It's like, no matter how much you hate each other, if you've got a marker due on these babies, you have to pay up. Do you know why that's cool? Because in the power struggle these guys are clearly constantly involved in, these talismans take it all away, making sure that your debt is always paid, even if the guy you owe a favor to is the one who also killed your puppy. Sorry, John. And while that's all cool, the best rule I think the franchise follows is that the game never stops. There's no rest and no timeouts in this merciless world. There's always a new enemy, a new marker, or a new danger to encounter. And if there ever comes a time when you think, okay, here's where it gets boring, bam! All of a sudden, the action begins. And each time, our neo-noir hero is in the middle of it, killing people, taking names, and making sure that there's no collateral damage in the process. Cause hey, Baba Yaga is disciplined like that. But in all seriousness, the world of John Wick is a never-ending cycle of violence and revenge, where there are as many people willing to pay for hits as there are willing to take them. And while it all seems impossible to see in real life, the cast, and my favorite Keanu, pull it off each time. Thanks to their intense training, the writer's ability to write a good story, and the one rule that I think sums up the entire John Wick franchise. If you kill, you have to make it count. There you have it, ladies and gents. Those are the strict rules the John Wick cast has to follow.